Recognized for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to weigh onto this important hearing. Additionally, I want to thank the witnesses for taking their time today. I want to thank Mr. Narasta for undermining the ranking member's argument that people are coming here illegally in order to evade persecution, violence, or other things, when we all know, and if you've made a trip to the border, you know that 90% of people who come here come for economic reasons, which underscores why are we allowing undocumented, unaccompanied minors to come into this country? Because if you're underage, you're not coming here to work economically, and we know that our DHS has already lost 85,000 or so unaccompanied minors who come here. Since President Biden took office, there have been over 6.7 million illegal crossings of our southern border. This includes 312 encounters with individuals whose names appear on the terrorist watch list, not to mention the 1.7 million known gotaways that evaded the U.S. Border Patrol. Yet instead of implementing more border security and reinstating policies that worked to reduce the flow, the Biden administration is housing migrants in our schools and our national parks. Meanwhile, there are thousands of ICE detention beds across more than 24 ICE facilities that are sitting empty, like the Adelanto ICE processing facility in my good friend from California, Representative Obernolte's district. This facility, which is already fully funded, has sat empty due to a court injunction from April 2020 for COVID restrictions. Last June, I was pleased that the House passed my resolution, HRES 461, condemning the use of elementary and secondary school facilities to provide shelter for migrants. Additionally, I was proud to support H.R. 5283, the Protecting Our Communities from Failure to Secure Our Border Act of 2023, introduced by Representative Nicole Malliotakis of New York. This legislation, which passed the House last November, prohibits American taxpayer funding from housing illegal immigrants on federal lands owned by the National Park Service, U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm going to shorten this. Councilwoman Vernikov, when there are thousands of beds available across the country at ICE detention facilities, can you discuss the public health disaster to housing migrants in tent shelters on our public lands like the one set up at Floyd Bennett Field?
Sure. Well, there have been many reports. If you take Floyd Bennett Field as an example of diseases going around at the shelter, part of it is, I guess, I'm not an expert, but I guess because people are just clustered together. And I'm not sure that they're actually reporting to the hospitals as much, but it's definitely been a concern for health officials regarding vaccinations, like I mentioned earlier, polio, tuberculosis, and any diseases that could be potentially contagious.
Yeah, and I certainly saw that as I was Department of Public Health Director, that in a facility that had high concentration, there was an increase in tuberculosis that had not been seen in 20 years. Was the impact of learning loss and the public health and safety of students at James Madison High School taking under consideration when the City of New York made the decision to kick kids out of school to house these migrants, even if supposedly it was only temporary, but we don't know if it was temporary or not, given the uproar that may have caused them to shorten how long they stayed in school?
Well, I think it was a really bad decision by our administration. But again, I think it stems from the fact that our border is not secure. So yes, we're forced to make these last-minute decisions because we don't know what to do in these situations, and we have an influx of migrants. We don't know where to place them, where to shelter them anymore. We just cannot sustain this crisis at this point, and spending $10.6 billion is just not sustainable.
And Mr. Narasta, you said that if we just merely, and I have several legal immigration bills, small fixes to our immigration problem, but you said that in reference to drug overdoses and the fentanyl crisis, that if we just got rid of the demand and we worked on the demand side, then that would end the illegal flow of drugs. So, but yet when it comes to migration, if we just open up the legal immigration system and allow more people to come in, that will slow demand. I think the Biden administration expected to slow the demand when they opened up the floodgates, but the demand has not slowed down. The demand has only increased with record numbers of border crossings each month as a record number. So I'm not sure the supply-demand equation that you're alluding to works when it comes to illegal immigration.
So I didn't say that about drugs, but in terms of, you just take a look at the border numbers yourself. From the time that parole was put in place for the CV and H countries, the number of migrants coming from those countries to the border dropped by 62%. The numbers compared to the previous 11 months, when you take a look at the migrants coming from all the other countries in the world, it's even on those two periods. It's a great quasi-natural experiment. I'm going to write an academic paper about it and get published in a top journal because it is so clear.
Well, I don't think any of those people coming across the border are the scientists that are going to start the next new companies, and we've got millions of people on a list that want to come here legally, and perhaps addressing the people who want to come here legally would be the way to start and close the southern border now. Thank you so much. I yield back my time.
Gentlelady yields back.